The night had settled softly over the hostel, the kind of silence that makes every breath sound too loud. The corridor lights flickered in and out, throwing weak shadows across the peeling walls. I was lying on my narrow bed, half awake, listening to the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the distant laughter of students still awake somewhere down the hall. I thought it would be another quiet night, just me, my thoughts, and the loneliness that had become part of hostel life. Then came the knock. It was gentle, hesitant, almost unsure of itself. When I opened the door, Malik stood there, his tall frame outlined against the dim light from the corridor. He was from Nigeria, always smiling, always full of life, the kind of person who could make a dull room feel alive. But tonight his eyes looked different, quieter, almost searching for something. "Can I stay here tonight?" he asked, his voice low. "My roommate brought friends over, too noisy there." I nodded without thinking. Malik had helped me many times before, with assignments, with football practice, even with homesickness when everything felt heavy. Letting him stay was natural. He walked in, carrying only a small blanket and his phone charger, and placed them neatly on the table before sitting at the edge of my bed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The fan rattled softly overhead, and I could hear the night insects outside the window. Malik broke the silence first. "You ever feel like the world just gets too quiet?" he said, looking up at the ceiling. I smiled faintly and said, "All the time." We talked about home, about food we missed, about how life in a new country made us feel both free and misplaced. There was comfort in the way he listened, his deep voice steady and patient. I told him things I hadn't told anyone about my family, my regrets, the pressure to always be strong. He didn't judge, didn't interrupt, he just listened, nodding softly now and then. At some point, the power went out. The fan stopped, plunging the room into stillness. Only the moonlight from the window remained, washing everything in silver. "Guess we're stuck with candlelight stories," Malik said with a small laugh. I lit a candle from my drawer, its flame trembling gently between us. Time moved differently then. The air felt heavy, filled with words we hadn't said. Malik leaned back against the wall, stretching his legs on the floor, his voice quieter now. "You're easy to talk to," he said. "Not many people here are like that." I shrugged. "Maybe because I know what loneliness feels like." He looked at me for a long moment, and something passed between us, something unspoken, something neither of us had planned. The silence stretched, not awkward but warm, like an invisible thread pulling us closer. "It's late," I said finally, trying to break whatever this was. "We should sleep." He nodded, pulled his blanket onto the floor, but I stopped him. "You can sleep here," I said, motioning to the other side of the bed. "It's cold down there." For a second, he hesitated, then quietly lay down beside me, careful not to cross the invisible line between us. We faced opposite directions, pretending to fall asleep. Yet I could feel his presence, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth radiating between us in the small space. Minutes turned into hours. Outside, the hostel had fallen completely silent. I opened my eyes once, catching a glimpse of his silhouette against the pale window light. There was a strange comfort in knowing he was there, somewhere between wakefulness and sleep. My thoughts blurred, of friendship, of trust, of boundaries I didn't yet understand. I didn't know what the night would bring or how it would change things. All I knew was that for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. The morning light crept slowly through the curtains, soft and golden. For a while, I didn't move. I could still feel the quiet rhythm of Malik's breathing beside me. The night had passed without words, without movement, yet it felt as though something had changed. There was a new weight in the air, a quiet awareness that neither of us wanted to name. When I finally sat up, Malik was already awake, lying still but staring at the ceiling. He looked peaceful, though his eyes held a kind of distance, as if he was lost in thought. "You snore," he said suddenly, a teasing smile breaking through the silence. I laughed, grateful for the lightness in his voice. "You kicked me twice in your sleep," I shot back. For a moment, everything felt normal again, two friends joking in the quiet morning. But beneath that laughter, I sensed something stirring, something I didn't understand but couldn't ignore. We went to breakfast together, like always. The mess hall buzzed with voices and clattering plates. A few of our classmates waved, asking if we had finished the project due next week. Malik answered for both of us, his easy confidence returning like a mask. But every now and then, his eyes found mine across the table, and there was a flicker of something unspoken. Later that day, classes blurred together. My mind wandered back to the night before, how his voice had softened when he spoke, how the silence between us had felt alive. I told myself it was nothing, just the closeness that came from being far from home. Still, the thought lingered. That evening, it rained. The hostel courtyard flooded, and the air smelled of wet earth and old memories. I sat by the window, watching drops race down the glass. Malik entered quietly, shaking off water from his hair. He looked tired, his shirt damp, but his smile was the same warm, disarming. "Power's out again," he said, sitting beside me. "Just like last night." I nodded, unable to look directly at him. There was comfort in his presence, but also confusion. "Do you ever miss home too much?" I asked softly. He leaned back, eyes on the rain. "Every day," he replied. "But sometimes, you find pieces of home in people." The words hung between us like a confession. My heart raced, though neither of us moved. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the window, drowning out everything else. I wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, but the question caught in my throat. Instead, we sat in silence again, two people bound by something we didn't dare name. Malik finally turned to me, his gaze steady but kind. "You think too much," he said. "Maybe," I replied. "Maybe I feel too much too." He smiled faintly, then looked away. "That's not a bad thing." We talked late into the night again, about dreams, about fear, about what it meant to trust someone completely. He told me about his mother, how she used to say that real strength was found in gentleness. I told him about my father, how silence had always been our way of avoiding truth. When the rain stopped, the room felt smaller, filled with the soft hum of night. Malik lay down on the bed again, and without speaking, I lay beside him. It didn't feel strange this time, it felt inevitable. We didn't touch, didn't speak. But I could feel the energy between us shift, something raw and real threading through the quiet. Every breath seemed to echo louder in the darkness. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed every word, every look, trying to understand what was happening. I knew what society would say, what people would assume. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was the calm in his presence, the way his silence said more than words ever could. When I finally drifted off, I dreamt of the rain again, of two strangers finding shelter in the storm, not because they planned to, but because they both needed it. And when I woke before dawn, I turned slightly and saw him still there, sleeping peacefully beside me. For the first time, I didn't try to explain it. I just let the quiet morning hold us, unspoken and fragile, like a secret we both understood but could never tell.
The morning light crept slowly into the room, pulling me out of uneasy sleep. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was, but then the memories of the night rushed back with a weight that made my stomach twist. He was still there, close enough that I could hear his breathing, steady and calm, as if nothing in the world had changed. For him, maybe it hadn't, but for me, everything felt different. That I slipped out of the bed quietly, trying not to wake him, though part of me knew he was already aware. The mirror on the wall caught my reflection, and I hardly recognized the person staring back. My mind replayed every detail, every choice I had made, and a heavy sense of guilt settled on my chest. I thought of the life I had outside this house, the trust one had once promised someone else, and the fragile line I had shattered in just one night. When he finally stirred, he smiled at me with a kind of ease that almost made me jealous. There was no trace of doubt in his face, only a quiet understanding. He didn't press me with questions or try to force a conversation. Instead, he offered me coffee, acting as though everything was normal. That calmness only made the storm in my head louder. I wanted to ask him what this meant, if it was just a moment we would bury, or if it was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. but the words stuck in my throat. Later, when I left his house, the air outside felt heavy, like the world somehow knew what I had done. At the gym, the following days were strange. We acted as though nothing had happened, but our eyes betrayed us. Every time they met, there was a flash of recognition, a memory we both carried but couldn't speak aloud. Sometimes it felt thrilling, the secrecy binding us together in a way no one else could understand. Other times, it felt like a chain, a reminder of the betrayal that sat quietly in the background of my life, that I found myself avoiding certain conversations with my partner, avoiding too much eye contact, avoiding questions that could lead anywhere close to the truth. The guilt gnawed at me, but so did the pull toward him. It was as though the more I tried to distance myself, the stronger the invisible thread between us became. Every workout, every shared smile, every accidental brush of his hand against mine, it all fed the conflict burning inside me. Nights were the hardest. That was when the silence left me alone with my thoughts, and the memory of that night replayed over and over. Sometimes I told myself it was a mistake, a lapse of judgment that should never happen again. Other times, I wondered if what I felt with him was real, something I had been missing without even knowing it. The questions never stopped, and with each passing day, I felt myself sinking deeper into a web I wasn't sure I could escape. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of what had happened refused to fade. I walked through my routines as if nothing had changed, but inside, everything was different. The distance between who I was supposed to be and what I had done grew wider each day. I caught myself staring into the mirror, searching for answers in my own reflection, wondering if guilt was written on my face for the world to see. At the gym, we still exchanged glances. Sometimes they were soft, filled with an unspoken understanding. Other times they were sharp, reminders of a secret too heavy for two people to carry in silence. He seemed more at peace with it than I was, moving through life as though he had accepted whatever we had done, while I was still trapped in endless circles of doubt. My chest ached with the thought of how easy it was for me to lose control, how quickly trust could crumble in the hands of temptation. One evening, I found myself sitting alone, thinking about love, loyalty, and betrayal. I wondered if what I felt that night was real affection or just a weakness born of desire. Was it I longed for, or simply the thrill of stepping outside the lines? The questions had no simple answers, but the consequences were real enough. My partner's trust, the life I had built, the quiet promises I had once made, all of it stood on fragile ground as he reached out once more, asking if I wanted to meet again. My heart leapt at the invitation, but my mind screamed against it. I knew that repeating the same choice would only tie me deeper into a story I might never escape. For the first time, I admitted to myself that I had to decide. Either I cut this secret thread before it strangled everything I valued, or I let myself fall, accepting the wreckage that would follow. In the end, I chose silence. I didn't reply, didn't go back, didn't allow myself another night like the first. The ache of walking away was sharp, but it carried a strange kind of relief, as though closing the door was the only way to breathe again. The memory remained, vivid and unshakable, but I let it live only in the past. Looking back, I realized the night had been both a warning and a lesson. Desire can disguise itself as love. Temptation can whisper louder than reason, and in a single moment, a person can step across a line that takes years to recover from. I carried the memory with me not as a triumph, but as a reminder. Love is fragile, and betrayal is a shadow that never truly disappears. And so, I walked forward, carrying both the guilt of what I had done and the knowledge of how easily it could happen again. Some stories stay hidden forever, but their echoes never stop shaping the person who lived them.